I'd like to share with you this less talked about part of history in case you don't know. This is an educational reminder. This is history, not to blame anyone. So be open to listening and don't be quick to criticize. What if I told you that slavery in America didn't just end with the abolition of African slavery? What if I told you that another group was forced into labor, exploited, and stripped of their dignity? When we think about slavery in America, most of the time we think about African slaves. But do you know that after African slaves were replaced, Asians also became enslaved? Their labor was exploited, their lives controlled, and their freedom denied. Yet, despite these hardships, they made choices that reshaped their future. Many Asian immigrants came to the U.S. in search of opportunity, only to find themselves trapped in systems of indentured servitude, forced labor, and extreme discrimination. In the mid-1800s, thousands of Chinese laborers were brought to America to build the Transcontinental Railroad. They endured extreme exploitation, working longer hours, earning far less than their white counterparts, and being assigned the most dangerous tasks. Avalanches, explosions, and exhaustions claimed countless lives, yet their sacrifices built the very infrastructure that connected the country. Many of these laborers were recruited under false pretenses, promised fair wages and a better life. Instead, they were bound by contracts they could not break, living in overcrowded camps with poor sanitation. They worked in tunnels filled with deadly fumes, often using explosives with little safety protection. If they died on the job, their bodies were often left where they fell, as their employers considered them expendable. Filipino workers arriving in the early 1900s were promised fair wages but were instead met with brutal working conditions in plantation and farms. Many worked in Hawaii sugarcane fields, subject to harsh discipline, substandard housing, and racial segregation. When they protested, they were met with violence and exclusion. Yet they persisted, forming labor movements that paved the way for better workers' rights. Japanese immigrants faced another layer of oppression. Many built small businesses and farms from the ground up, only to be stripped of their homes and livelihood when they were forced into internment camps during World War II. Families lost everything: businesses, homes, and personal belongings, locked away in camps with no certainty of when they could return. Despite this injustice, they rebuilt their lives after the war, proving that resilience is stronger than discrimination. Meanwhile, laws like the Chinese Exclusion Acts of 1882 and the Immigration Acts of 1924 severely limited Asian immigration and reinforced racial barriers. Asian families were legally barred from owning land, becoming citizens, or marrying outside their race in certain states. Discrimination was institutionalized. Yes, they fought to create a future despite the odds. Asian women, especially Chinese women, were trafficked and forced into sexual slavery, treated as commodities into the system, and saw them as nothing more than the property. The 1875 Page Act was one of the first U.S. laws targeting immigration, restricting the entry of Chinese women under the assumptions that they were all prostitutes. Many women were kidnapped or deceived into traveling to America, only to be forced into brothels with no way out. The 1882 Chinese Exclusion Acts then effectively cut off legal entry for Chinese immigrants, forcing many into underground economies just to survive. The beginning of the end of Asian labor exploitation came through organized resistance and legal reforms. In the early 20th century, Asian laborers, particularly Filipinos, formed labor unions and went on strike. In California, Filipino farm workers led by Larry Itlian fought for fair wages and better working conditions. eventually teaming up with Cesar Chavez in the 1965 Delano grape strike, which restrained labor rights in America. The Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 removed the racial barriers that had long excluded Asians from fully participating in American society. This allowed families to reunite, skilled workers to enter the country, and paved the way for economic mobility. As more Asian immigrants gained citizenship and education, they entered various industries, building businesses and professional careers that would redefine their communities' roles in American society. Many of the first-generation immigrants started with nothing. They worked grueling hours, often over 80 hours a week, running small restaurants, laundromats, and convenience stores. Others took multiple jobs just to provide a better future for their children. Their sacrifices create a foundation that enabled the next generations to access education and break into professional fields. This work ethic and survival mentality carried through generations, which is why many Asian American families today emphasizes hard work, financial independence, and education. Unlike other racial narratives in America, Asian communities rarely discuss slavery because they have chosen to define their identity through resilience and progress rather than victimhood. This is not a call for compassion. It's a reminder that history does not have to dictate our future. Yes, Asians were exploited. Yes, they were enslaved in different forms, but they made a choice to rise, to build, to create a better lives. Today, I bring this up not to ask for pity or an apology. I'm sending you a message about making the right choice. Yes, history was unfair, and yes, sometimes harsh realities were necessary to build this country when there were no other options. But the most important thing today is not looking back to blame or argue about privilege. What we need now is mutual respect and the refusal of discrimination. But that does not mean because of this past, you must treat me better. That is not equality. Equality is about life choices, making decisions, and being resilient. If you want for others to help you, you are putting your future in their hands. But if you depend on yourself, you will have to find ways to rise. The past shaped us, but the future is ours to build. If you enjoyed this video and agree with what I said, keep following for more. Please subscribe and don't forget to like and share. See you in the next video.